Thank you so much. And I'm going to get my specs out here. Well, last fall, we began working our way through the ancient stories found in Genesis. And we are attempting to reread the Bible with fresh eyes and a new perspective. We took a break from this occasional series through the Lenten season, and now I wish to return to these biblical stories. We each see the Bible through the lens or through the perspective of our own consciousness. Maybe we came from a faith tradition that insisted the Bible was historically accurate in every detail, or maybe these were just stories with a moral lesson that we may have understood or not. Some people have concluded that the Bible contains nothing relevant and that we can dismiss it entirely. Well, let's attempt to see these Bible stories again. Maybe as the psychologist Carl Jung called prime myths of our culture. These stories are a part of our psychological nature. They may not describe actual factual history, but instead describe our psychological makeup. And rereading these stories through this lens, through the lenses of symbolic meaning and metaphor and poetry, we can see things not as they were, but as we are. So let's ask ourselves, what do these stories mean to me? What do they mean to my spiritual growth? What do they mean to Evan Coleman in 2024? You can tell how old I am. What do they mean to us in 2024, Lincoln, Nebraska, or wherever you're viewing from? In Unity, Bible characters have a corresponding trait that relates to a part of our consciousness. We saw this in the Abraham stories. Abraham represents our quality or our trait of faith. And like us, sometimes Abraham holds fast to his faith and he follows his guidance, but at other times, just like us, he takes matters into his own hands and he demonstrates a lack of faith. Now we are in the Jacob cycle of stories, the collection of stories about Jacob. We said that Jacob represents our intellectual nature, and we saw how our intellect can become cunning and manipulative. The story of Jacob cheating his brother Esau demonstrates an undisciplined intellectual nature. Still, Jacob has begun to learn an incredible truth about the law of cause and effect. What goes around comes around. In Unity, we call this the law of mind action. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Jacob has cheated his brother Esau out of his birthright and his blessing, and now Jacob has had to flee home. He's had to travel up north and live with his uncle Laban. But as we discovered, Laban can give as good as he gets. Laban is also cunning and manipulative. Laban also achieves things through deceiving people. And just like Jacob tricked his brother Esau, Laban tricks Jacob into marrying Leah instead of Rachel, and is forced to work an additional 7 years. In Laban, Jacob finds a mirror into his own consciousness. spiritual seekers on the path will recognize this phenomenon. The people in our lives are mirrors for us. Our lives reflect how we think and how we attract people, how we find ourselves in various places and situations. These are all reflections of our consciousness. And when we see faults in other people, negative traits or things that we don't like in other people, it is our own faults that we are seeing in them. We cannot change ourselves by altering the mirror that we look into. We must change ourselves first, and then the reflection will change. Jacob, our intellectual nature, must deal with his cunning and manipulative consciousness. He must learn the law of mind action and experience the effects caused by his own thinking. And he sees these effects through the mirror of Laban. Jacob has contracted to work for Laban for 14 years for Laban's daughters, Rachel and Leah. And now, that's a pretty good deal for Laban, isn't it? I mean, Laban's getting a lot of benefit from this deal that he's struck with Jacob. He's getting Jacob's labor essentially for free. But now Jacob and Laban begin to argue over wages. Jacob wants to take his wives and his children and go back home. We pick up the story in Genesis 30, verse 25. Jacob tells Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my home and my country. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and let me go. For you know the service that I have given you." But Laban told him, "If you will allow me to say so, the Lord has blessed me because of you. So name your wages, and I will give it." Jacob tells Laban that he will go through the herd and remove all the speckled and spotted sheep and goats. Jacob tells Laban, "You take all the good stuff. You take all the good stuff, I'll take what's left over. I'll take the rejects. And you take the more valuable animals." Laban says, "Sounds like a pretty good idea to me." I'm paraphrasing a little. Sounds like a pretty good idea to me. But before Jacob can separate the herd, Laban has his sons go through and take out all the speckled and spotted sheep. So that Jacob has to start over from scratch. He's got to start all over. What a dirty deal. When I first moved to Kansas City in the early 1990s, I had a boss that reminded me a lot of Laban. Part of my compensation was in the form of a bonus. We were supposed to meet specific goals, and if we achieved those goals, then we would get a bonus. And I worked really, really hard to achieve those goals. But just as I was about to achieve them, he would change the formula. The boss did this several times. And one time, after he announced that these goals were changing again, well, the day after he made that announcement, he showed up driving a fancy new car. And I started looking for a different job. You see how we can see our personal stories reflected through the characters in the biblical stories. Back to Jacob and Laban. Jacob must start from scratch to build his herd. Jacob takes these long sticks, these rods. He takes these long sticks and he peels the bark off so that they have dark and light streaks in them, and the sticks look speckled and spotted. Jacob then takes those speckled and spotted sticks and he sticks them up by the feeding troughs so that when the animals came to be fed and watered, they would see these streaked, speckled, spotted sticks. And then when the sheep and goats mated, they would produce speckled and spotted lambs. Okay, all of you 12 Powers students, what power of mind does this represent? Imagination. Imagination. The imaging faculty of the mind is powerful. It dramatically influences the world and that world that we experience. The ancient Greeks and other cultures used to surround their pregnant women with beautiful objects, believing that the woman would then give birth to beautiful children. Doesn't that make sense? It is through our imagination that the formless takes form. Artists and artisans will see their creations, every painting, every sculpture, every artistic creation, they will see these creations in their mind before they ever touch their brush on the canvas or take a handful of clay. We create our lives. We continually create our lives through our faculty of imagination. Sometimes we imagine what we want, but unfortunately, we also use our imagination in the form of worry and fear. We say that every thought is a prayer, and we use our imagination to pray for what we don't want instead of what we do want. Instead of seeing our lives as healthy and strong, we worry about illness. We imagine the worst, and we worry about our finances instead of using our imagination to see ourselves prosperous. Worrying is using our imagination to pay a toll before we get to the bridge. But we can use that same faculty of imagination to heal and to prosper our lives. We can use our imagination to create a life better than our fondest dreams. I have a gift for everyone today. It's a visualization aid. Do you have it there? Our ushers will go through and pass these out. I've printed stickers with $1 million bill on them, reminding us in God we trust. Now you can place these stickers anywhere that you like, any place that you handle or think about your finances. I used to tell people to place one of these stickers on their checkbook, but if you're like me, I no longer carry a checkbook all the time. And I've discovered that if you put one on your credit card, it gums up the credit card reader. So don't do that. But put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, put it on your desk when you're paying your bills. Use this power of imagination within you and begin to see your prosperity wherever you look. The power of imagination caused Jacob's herd to grow with those speckled and spotted sticks. And at the end of Genesis chapter 30, it says that Jacob grew exceedingly rich. He had large flocks of sheep and goats, camels and donkeys. Jacob became an ancient millionaire. As a matter of fact, there's a book, Powell.
Millionaires of Genesis.
Millionaires of Genesis, absolutely. Jacob became an ancient millionaire because he understood the power of imagination. Jacob, our intellectual nature, has learned the power of his imagination and the law of mind action to transform his life. And we too can use these principles to create lives better than our fondest dreams and our wildest imagination. God bless you all. And this is our opportunity, yours and mine, to pour out the gift of God from within us through our tithes and our love offerings. And if we could share this offertory blessing together. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am joy-filled and grateful. Thank you, God. And you can send your gifts, your tithes, your love offerings to paypal.me/UnityLincoln. That's paypal.me/UnityLincoln. Or you can send your gifts through the mail or through a bank transfer by sending them to Unity Lincoln, P.O. Box 30209, Lincoln, Nebraska 68503. Or you can go to our webpage at unitylincoln.org and find a convenient link to donate via PayPal. You can also help support Unity Lincoln by liking us on Facebook and subscribing on YouTube. And give and God gives it back to you. Give and God gives it back to you. Give and God gives it back to you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over, back in good measure. God gives it back to you. Sing it over, give and God gives it back to you. Give and God gives it back to you. Give and God gives it back to you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over, back in good measure. God gives it back to you. Scooby-Dooby-Dooby-Doo. And can we share this affirmation for our church family together? Unity Lincoln is blessed to draw the people, funds, and all that is required for the health and growth of our community and peace in the world, heart to heart. And